One of the most overlooked parts of concealed carry is the belt. Our primary focus is always the gun. Then we start looking at holsters, we look at accessories, we look at upgrades. The belt, though, as important as it is, tends to be some cheap holdover that we just live with till we realize the mistake we've made. So today I want to sit down, I want to talk about what makes a good gun belt and take a look at a couple examples of good belts and one example of a not so good belt. All right, so first things first, this isn't an area to be cheap, and coming from me, that really means something. We're looking for a belt that's not only going to hold up your pants, but it's going to hold your gun where it needs to be. It's going to keep it close to your person, it's going to keep from shifting and moving around. The only way to get this is to make sure that your belt is stiff and it's rigid. Just because a belt is stiff and rigid doesn't mean it has to be uncomfortable. The first belt I want to talk about is Alien Gear's gun belt. Now this thing I've had almost 3 years. It's beat up, it's well used. This is the kind of belt that if Epstein had had one, the world would have a lot less memes. And when I went to the Alien Gear site today, it looks like, who is it? Bigfoot gun belts. So they're referring everybody back to Bigfoot gun belts for these things. As far as I can tell, the belts are exactly the same. I don't see any difference other than the manufacturer stamp. If anybody has any information on why Alien Gear made the switch, go ahead and leave a comment down below. But for now, let's take a closer look at it. The Alien Gear or Bigfoot gun belt, whichever one you want to call it, is made out of pretty high quality leather. One of the things I really like about this belt is that sandwiched in between these two layers is a layer of spring steel. That spring steel is going to go from your last hole all the way up and around. I don't know, it probably ends somewhere near the buckle. The spring steel is going to help with a couple of things. It's going to give it added rigidity. It's also going to help so that over time this belt is not going to sag or deform. It's not going to stretch out. All in all, it's going to last you a very long time before you have to replace it, which is something you definitely want to look for when you're spending $60+ on a gun belt. The next belt I want to talk about is Blue Alpha Gear's Hybrid EDC. So a lot of people out there are using these. I've seen a ton of reviews on them. You'll notice it is very rigid, real stiff. It's actually pretty comfortable considering how stiff and rigid that it is. But that's exactly what you're looking for in a gun belt. You don't want that thing sagging down or stretching out, causing problems over long term. One thing that helps with the rigidity and strength of this belt is that it's not just one layer of nylon, it's a dual layer. So it's going to stay the shape that it's supposed to be. You can go ahead and you can add your gun to it, and it's not going to deform or sag down or anything. I'd probably say my favorite part of this gun belt is the Velcro that they've sewn on here. So a lot of belts have, you know, a capture ring or whatever, and you slide the tail through and it just kind of flops around. This one, they went ahead and sewed Velcro on both sides. So you make your adjustment so that it's where it's supposed to be. Stick that sucker down, and it's not going anywhere. This tail isn't going to flop around, and you don't have to worry about the belt actually backing itself out and loosening up on you while you're on the go. I mean, it's going to stay right there. Now, I do wish they made the Velcro come out just a little bit longer. I guess I could have ordered one size smaller and been good to go, but I'm not going to send it back. I don't really have time for all that bullshit. Another key feature on this belt is the Cobra belt buckle. You'll notice that the female side is quite a bit smaller than the male side. I don't have a single pair of pants that this female side won't go ahead and just slide all the way through the loops. So a lot of the synthetic belts out there, the buckles are so big that you have to actually remove the buckle, thread the belt through your pants, put the buckle back on, and then you're good to go. This one's not the case. Just slide it in like any other belt and you're good to go. The belt itself, when you're wearing it, has a very low profile. It doesn't stick up very much at all, really, once you get it sized properly. That means that no matter what position that you're carrying in, this belt is going to work well for you. Before we get too far ahead of ourselves, let's talk about some cons with these two belts. We'll start with the Alien Gear or the Bigfoot, whichever one. Because of the thickness of this belt, if you're carrying appendix, what's going to happen is you're going to run a high risk of printing. It's actually going to look like you've got a kangaroo pouch, fupa, or fanny pack situation going on. So here we've got the appendix rig from Spider Concealment, which I'll be showing more in depth during an upcoming video for this series. Since my M&P is currently off having the slide milled, I'll use a holster mold as an example. This is usually what I run with here. Now, you can see the first problem is that this loop is never going to fit over both layers of the leather belt. So you have to move that to the side, get it over one layer, put the flap through there. Now at this point, I've got the holster, I've got all of this leather just sticking out all over the place. And if my shirt's not loose enough, that's what we end up with. Now, if I'm wearing a belt that's a little bit slimmer, a little bit more low profile, then I can get the appendix rig on and nobody's the wiser. I can go on about my business, go shopping, do whatever, and it doesn't look like I'm wearing a fanny pack underneath of my t-shirt. So, in those regards, the Blue Alpha gear is definitely superior if you're going to be carrying anywhere in the appendix area. Really, that's my only critique on that Alien Gear gun belt, is my preferred carry method is appendix. And whenever I carry appendix with that belt, it just sticks out like a sore thumb. As far as the Blue Alpha Gear gun belt goes, my only critique is that this buckle can be a little bit temperamental. You really have to get used to how to actually unbuckle it, because you press these two in and it doesn't want to go. I've had a few times where I get home from work and I go to change out of my work clothes and it just doesn't want to open. And that's because you have tension on the belt and it won't open. You actually have to push the two buckles in, press, and release. It's not that bad once you get the hang of it, but I'll tell you, this belt could be dangerous on a Taco Tuesday if you don't know how to operate it. I mean, in the right conditions, this belt can make for a real shitty situation. Pun intended. The last belt we're going to take a look at is by Fairwin Tactical. They're calling it a gun belt, but I'm not 100% convinced. Okay. If this looks familiar, there's a good reason. It's because this is clearly a Chinese knockoff of the Blue Alpha gear, except they went with a single layer construction, which means that it doesn't hold its shape at all. There's no stiffness, there's no rigidity. Now, while this is a decent belt as far as a belt goes, if I'm carrying a gun, what's going to happen is wherever that gun is located, it's going to sag and lower down. The gun is not going to be in a consistent location every single time I reach for it. So for me, that's a big negative. On the positive end of the spectrum, this buckle is actually pretty smooth. If they had went with dual layer nylon construction, honestly, it wouldn't be that bad of a belt. And I hate saying it because, of course, it is a Chinese knockoff, but the buckle works pretty smooth. Now, over here, we've got the elastic capture ring. It doesn't really do anything. It slides around on the belt. You never know where it's going to be. It doesn't hold the tail end very well. And so, honestly, I found that wearing this belt, what's going to end up happening is your strap is going to pull back a little bit as you're walking around. It resizes the damn thing. And so the next thing you know, instead of it sitting flush up against your body, it wants to poke out wherever that gun is. I found that after a couple hours of wearing this belt, it tends to want to migrate around the body. The strap wants to move itself back a little bit, which ends up loosening the belt. You constantly have to tighten it. Any of my friends that want to chime in about exactly how cheap I am, just go ahead and do it in the comments below. I know you're all just dying to do so. Even with as cheap as I am, I can't get on board with this thing. I mean, this is the kind of belt that I was talking about in the beginning, where you find the cheapest belt that you can, you wear it, and then you realize, what the hell did I waste my money on? For me, it's all about value. If the $15 belt, and yes, I did say $15, if that $15 belt creates more problems than it solves, then why wouldn't I just spend the $60 on the belt that this thing is clearly trying to imitate, solve myself the headache, and be good to go for quite a while? All right, so let's recap. First, don't be overly cheap. It's going to cost you more in the long run. Second, pick a belt that is stiff and rigid. It's going to go ahead and hold up all your gear, your pants, your gun, anything that you need to attach to it. Third, make sure you pick a belt that's going to suit your Conceal Cary style and personal style, because nobody wants to wear a god-awful, ugly-ass belt. So I think that's about it for today. I'm going to wrap this up. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, and share, and enjoy your week.